the discussion.
Great.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the very first webinar of the Rethinking Tomorrow series that is put together by TUSIAD Silicon Valley Network. My name is Ipek Tunca, and I have the honor of moderating this event today. I also happen to be an active member of the network, and I am very privileged to be hosting our two amazing speakers today, both of whom do not necessarily need any further introduction other than sharing their names. TUSIAD President Simone and our Silicon Valley Network Chair, Aysegul Ildeniz. What we're going to do is we're going to have them answer a few prepared questions. That's going to take us about to the halfway of the hour, and then we're going to open it up for any questions that you might have for them. Your mics will not be open, so if you want to have any, if you want to make any comments or if you want to add any questions, feel free to use the chat window. And looking forward to a great discussion. Before we jump to the questions, I actually would like to ask Aysegul Hanım to talk a little bit about the TUSIAD Silicon Valley Network first.
Thank you very much, İpek, and thank you, President, Başkanımız, katıldığınız için. It's an honor to have you here as we kick off these series of webinars, which is exciting to happen in such an interesting time, I think, for everybody globally, including in Turkey and Silicon Valley. So we're pretty much sharing the same issues here. It's been almost 2 years that we've been formed as the TUSIAD Silicon Valley Network. And what we aim to do is, one, gather up and build a network of business professionals in the Silicon Valley and Bay Area at large, and establish links with the purpose to support each other and get to know each other and understand our businesses. But most importantly, our second goal is to establish links and bridges with the TUSIAD members in Istanbul and larger Turkey. And hopefully that would, in the long run, turn into business opportunities for both and work together so we can give back to Turkey. So that's the purpose of our network, and I will welcome everybody who is new to the network to join in to our events. Write to us, let's get to know each other and be a part of it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. So we're going to jump right into the questions. And of course, I would love to start with Simone Bey. First few directed to you. Let's start with the basics. How did the business sector get impacted by COVID-19, and how has TUSIAD responded to the crisis?
Well, Ipek and Aysegul, it's great to be back with the Silicon Valley Network. I've been involved in together with Aysegul since the very beginning. So I feel really very passionate about this initiative. And I wish we were physically there, but I'm glad we can still manage to continue with our communication through these new instruments that we got to learn during this period. So, during this COVID crisis in Turkey, business was impacted. Different sectors were impacted in different ways. Some sectors, like tourism sector, had suffered a sudden stop, and others managed to continue to work because we didn't have a full lockdown like many other countries or places in the world. And one of the reasons why we managed to continue our operations is because we managed in Turkey to manage the health part quite efficiently, surprisingly maybe to some. Turkey had invested heavily in infrastructures, in the hospitals, in the intensive care units. Turkey had sufficient numbers of ventilators. And it probably also practiced the protocol that was probably efficient in protecting also everyone that was involved in the health sector. And so the number of cases, even though it was quite high, like most places in the world, and the number of people that were hospitalized, intubated, or the death rate was relatively low. It was probably one of the lowest in the world. Turkey managed to do this with a different type of lockdown. Young people, younger than 20, and older people than 60, people that were older than 65 were required to stay home. There was a lockdown of, or let's say, the lockdown of several cities, which has allowed to basically control the spread on all the country. Local flights were stopped. The highways were very strictly controlled, and so probably Istanbul was the worst affected area. 60% of the people affected with the virus are in Istanbul. But businesses basically that had a continued demand were able to continue to operate. And this was really very much due to the fact that there was this feeling that the spread was somehow controlled. Now we are in the new normal, let's say, in the recovering phase, and we all hope that there won't be a second wave, and that the economy may recover.
Yeah, thank you. So the theme of our webinar today is leading through the crisis. Were there any examples of leadership of companies in Turkey that you believe who managed the crisis particularly well?
Companies in general who had invested in the digital transformation in Industry 4.0, who had created an environment where workers would work in an environment where there is safety, basically managed to cope with the crisis better than others. And we as TUSIAD, we had always promoted this the importance of digital transformation and investing in it. And so those that were able to do so were able to start the work from home practice effectively and quickly, and thus reducing the number of people at the workplace. And so basically keeping to the workplaces to the strictly minimum amount of people that were necessary to continue the manufacturing operations, etc. But all the other services and disciplines that could be done from home was done from home thanks to those investments that were done prior to the crisis. And there are some examples of real success stories, such as, for example, the company of Aysegul, who started to produce ventilators. It was certainly not a product that they had in their offering range, but they developed it very, very rapidly, thanks to their cooperation with a few startups, with some government entities, etc. And think the objective was to have something like 5,000 ventilators by the end of May, and I'm quite sure that they were able to do it. And so, yes, there are winners and losers like everywhere else in the world, and we were able to witness some of those also here, especially among our members.
Thank you. Those are some very good examples. And now that the global and Turkish economy is quote unquote reopening, what are TUSIAD's plans moving forward?
So, well, TUSIAD has been involved in the crisis from the very beginning in different ways. First stage, we tried to understand the issues that were pressing most to our members. So we created a portal on our website where we tried to put together the issues that our customers had in common, or that issues that were particular to certain sectors, and the proposed solutions to these problems. And we also have analyzed what other countries that were affected before us were practicing, and trying to analyze and find the successful methods or approaches to the problem. And then we communicated these ideas, these proposals, these issues to the government officials, to the various ministries, to the president, the vice president, the advisors to the president, the parliament, and in order to inform them in time with our suggestions and advice. At this moment, we have created a post-COVID work group that is that comprises the presidents of our various working groups, working basically on the various disciplines that we work on in TUSIAD, in order to first share with our members the best practices, so that they can continue to operate in safety, but also inform all the stakeholders of all the opportunities that the post-COVID recovery period may bring, may create. Because the new normal is going to be probably different than the normal that we stopped having just before the crisis erupted. So there are opportunities, and this group is working on them. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm sure everybody is looking forward to hearing even more. But this isn't the first time that Turkey has been through a crisis. I mean, definitely not a pandemic, but we have been through many of challenging situations, let's say. How do you think those experiences prepared the businesses to deal with the current situation?
Yeah, in fact, Turkey had quite a few crises before this one. This one is a bit different crisis in the sense that it's not a financial crisis. the way we had it in 2008, which did not really affect Turkey. It was more of an international crisis. We had before 2001 a local financial crisis. But I think what all these crises have taught the business community is that crisis at one point ends. They don't continue indefinitely. So the less you panic and the less you maintain confidence that you will find opportunities and new markets, then you tend to be to wait for, let's say, the crisis to end, and this is maybe it gives a certain amount of resilience to the Turkish economy, to the Turkish business community in particular. So, what this crisis has also shown us is that we have, after all, a strong health system, health workers, doctors, and that has given a certain amount of also security, confidence, that we can overcome the next challenges. Surprisingly, and maybe we are, I think, motivated with all the future challenges, of all the instruments that we have now come to learn to use, which will certainly bring lots of efficiency, competitiveness, certain industries. I think we have also discovered that our government has made also quite a lot of advances and investments in the digital area. We have what we call E-Devlet Turkey, which has allowed the government to continue to offer its services. And in fact, also, we have noticed that our Ministry of Commerce was quite open and technologically prepared to also facilitate trade without interaction of people, and with facilitating also documentation over the internet, and which has allowed basically for trade to continue. Of course, demand has come down quite sensibly in a lot of the markets we serve. But for those that are continuing to operate, Turkey was able to continue to offer its services.
All right, thank you. Aysegul, I would like to come to you because as part of your professional career, you also had to manage a lot of crisis situations and had to lead your teams around the globe. Are there any learnings that you can share from those?
Sure. Thank you, İpek. At the earlier parts of my career, I had to virtually run Middle East and Africa region, and then my remit became bigger, and I ran global organizations in Latin America, APAC, Asiana, Australia, different parts of the world, which, as you could imagine, 70% of these countries is emerging markets, just like Turkey is, where many things do happen, and they constantly happen. So it was kind of like juggling a bunch of, one day something is up and a couple of years later it's down. And so I have seen in my career wars, earthquakes, terrorist attacks, economic crashes, which is more frequent than the others, thank God. But those give you a sense of, it's interesting, you get used to them in the sense that I think our president said it perfectly, they do come to an end. It's either 6 months or a year or 18 months, but ultimately they finish. And to know that, makes everybody feel much more focused and feel great. So that's the first thing. I think maybe, it is being a Turkish executive, and I always hear my colleagues talk about that, which is we Turks are very interesting. We actually have this, resilience of dealing with crises. We can get very practical. We can get very pragmatic to say, okay, what's the action? Let's save the day. And, we'll live to live another day. And then we get very tactical, very flexible, really fast. So that's a great, I think, opportunity we had growing up in Turkey with all the either the coups or the earthquakes and economic crashes, what have you. But I think the other very important part, and again, maybe this comes from the education that we got in the very good schools we had in Turkey, which is being analytical and staying focused in the long run, being disciplined and strategic. So if you actually can put these two together, then your survival is much higher probability, in the sense that you need to have a mission, which is not short term, it's much longer, a couple of years out, and you know what you stand for. The idea is, how are you going to pivot your current business to ultimately to get to that? I think to help in that, maybe a couple of points that I think as an infrastructure you need to have. Number one, having the ability to pivot from a product perspective. So I'll give a couple of examples from myself. I provided technology all my life. That's what I still do. If you can, in an economic downturn, when the consumer affordability goes down, it tanks for a while, as an example, you should be able to focus right away to enterprise business or to government business. You should be able to, instead of, focusing on run rate, low margin, products that you're selling, right away move on to high margin, service related type of products. So example, while we were trying to provide computers for the kids in Africa, all of a sudden, we got issues. We pivot to supporting Aramco in Saudi Arabia, which is one of the biggest companies in the world. And the stuff they buy and they focus on is radically different. How you serve, millions and millions of school children is an example. I'll give another one. In my last company in Silver Spring Networks, when the Australian, grid sector was coming down, we basically took the product that we had, which was this huge electric grid smart solution, and turned it into a cloud solution where thousands of developers could do whatever they want with it when we put it on the cloud, and then they could hack it in any way they want and turn it into a smart city solution, be it smart lighting or smart parking or whatever. So it became all of a sudden scalable. So I think this is the key to be ready for crises. Number two, I think, is the most important thing, which is you need to have a reliable team. In the sense that they gotta have a competency and confidence. In the time of crisis, you don't know, right, what to do. You have no idea. You're sitting in your, whatever, White Tower in Istanbul or San Francisco, and these people on the ground are trying to save the day wherever they are in the world. So you got to give them the responsibility, but they have to be very capable. So hire the best people that you can is my second recommendation. And thirdly, I think it's the customers. You got to take care of them. I never forget, every time there was something really, really bad happening wherever, I would just get in a plane, meet with the team, and sit in front of the customer and keep asking them, how can I help you? what do we do to support you? What do you think you need? And that just keep asking how, you know, to give them the feeling that you're there. Ultimately, in the long run, people do business with people, not with corporations. It's how you know, do they respect you? Do they trust you? Do they want to keep talking to you when the crisis is over? I think is the most important thing.
Excellent. So as you were managing through all of these crises, have you established any leadership principles that you could share that you believe would be helpful?
Sure. Yeah, I always try to bunch things in three. So I'll give you 3 principles that I try to abide by. Number 1 is care for your people, your own people. Something funny about me that folks do not know, and I think first time in my life, there's a reason why I should share this. I'm actually a security expert, believe it or not. Unfortunately, I know how to take people out of a country by a United Nations flotilla that I had to do in Beirut. I know how to build safe walls in an office, which I had to do in Saudi Arabia when there was the terrorist attacks, or, hire security guards to support people from walking from their home to wherever they need to go, as in the case in Egypt, because there were no police around. So it's these things which you show to your workers that you care and you're there no matter, but it's rather that it's important what they do is important, not how are you going to support them is the big question. Second one, I think, is this local empowerment. And I keep going back to that, but this is very important. You need to have the people to make their own rules in times of crisis. You can't go, okay, I have this whatever, $50 billion company, here is our company rules, go do them. That they will fail miserably. You gotta have them enough trust and confidence to say, in my space, in my country, in my market, here's the customers, here's the product, this is how the partners that I'm gonna work with. So you gotta enable them, which of course is not easy, right? You need to be able to trust them. It takes a long time, it takes personal relationships, but that is really, really important. And if ultimately, it is at a time, and I'll again share an example. This is Egypt after the revolution. We got, tens and tens of, hundreds of people in Egypt, and there was no economy. It's all shut down, right? Or the earthquake after Turkey in 1999. What do you do with the people? There's no market to sell anything or to do any business. Then you repurpose them. You create them as virtual teams. And what I've done is I shipped half of the people to Istanbul, to where I was, or to Frankfurt or Western European headquarters, where their immense expertise and knowledge we could actually utilize. So we repurposed them, but again, you got to hire the good people who are flexible enough that you can do those things. And I think finally, that mission that I talked about, what do you stand for, is incredibly important. For people in the time of crisis, you got to give them a reason to get up from bed. The people need that. They're like, okay, why am I here? What's the meaning of life? There's all this huge existentialist stuff they are dealing with. And I mean, in my case, it was easy. We're giving technology as an access to humans, right? It's fine. It's fantastic. It's bettering their lives. So create that vision, mission and vision for people to want to work for you, I think is very important.
That's excellent advice. And you alluded to it a little bit. You not only have worked in all of these different international markets, but you also have vast experience working in Silicon Valley itself. So are there any best practices or any advice that you can share based on what you know from Silicon Valley for Turkish companies that they can learn from?
Sure. Yeah. I think the past couple of months, it's been very interesting to watch the companies here in San Francisco and the Bay Area. I would call out particularly, the obvious ones are you're all following, the Zoom and the gaming companies, what have you. They're living a boom, which is fantastic, good for them. They're giving solutions or, fix people's boredoms, which is fabulous. But when we look at the brick and mortar companies, I think they are the ones that were faced with the biggest issue. And I'm pretty impressed by, I'll give a couple of examples, a Best Buy, a Target, what have you, where they had these great grandiose plans of one day moving on to online, and all of a sudden they had to do it in a matter of 4 weeks. And some of them actually did it in 2 weeks, which was pretty impressive. And it totally strained the entire IT infrastructure they had. It strained their technical people, it strained their salespeople, but they managed, and their stock price is doing really well. So what I think what I've seen is that it is a great time to change and be bold in terms of, do you change your business model, right? There isn't any other better time, because otherwise you're gonna just get out of business. So you better change your product, change your service, or change your business model. Just my practical recommendation is, everybody has these famous innovation days, innovation labs. Oh, let's work with these startups that are conversations I know Turkish companies have forever, but they never take action. Today is the day. Startups in Silicon Valley are desperately in need of money, capital. They got to raise that. So this is an excellent time, maybe a couple of months, maybe not right now. But come September, I think they will be very desperate to do partnerships, to licensing their products or technology, or raising money, whatever. So this is a good time to look at, okay, how do I change my product vertically or horizontally, and are there companies that I can work with? And then, as I said previously, go look at the innovative, creative ideas your own teams have come up with and start implementing them. But this is tactical. If I may, I guess my last comment is going to be the big picture. In the big picture, pandemic or not, the world is trying to tackle two things. How do we understand humans better? Hence the artificial intelligence, augmented reality, all these things to get to the bottom of data analytics. What are we going to do as humans, right? So number one. Number two, it's understanding machines. So all these gadgets and stuff around us, can they get more smart to help our lives, which is autonomous vehicles, Internet of Things, self-running factories, self-maintaining stuff, what have you. All of these two things, if you can actually pivot your company to latch on to either one of them, you will come out of this pandemic much more strongly, is what I recommend.
Excellent. Hearing both of your comments, I actually just made me think of the saying, crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And I love the message around looking at the opportunities that it creates. Okay, one final question for both of you, and then I already see that there are some questions coming from the audience. Earlier this year, we were in the process of planning to host another TUSIAD delegation in San Francisco. Unfortunately, we had to, of course, delay those plans. We moved all of our events and programming online. So given the circumstances, what are some of the things that the network can do to contribute to all of the work that you both have outlined? And maybe Simone, we start with you.
Start with me.
What are your expectations from the network?
So, from the very beginning, the idea was how to inspire, how to inspire the business community in Turkey with the new technologies, the digital transformation, the opportunities that this can offer. And on the other hand, how to improve the communication lines between Turkish startups in the Valley, and how to also improve the communication lines within the Turkish community in the Valley, so as to try to help with the best practices, the network that the various members have in their community, to help the newcomers, the young with the new ideas succeed in their ventures. Help them find the funds, the capitals, the markets, the customers, and possibly also create ways of cooperation with Turkish companies, be customers or be companies that have the skills and talents that can complement the needs of the startups or maybe mature companies in the valley. So I think in the initial 2 years, we have you had within your network started the projects to basically inspire and try to coach some of these new startups with ideas, best practices, etc. From here on, and with especially having discovered these tools of communication, I think the possibilities of recruiting talent in different parts of the world, in different parts of the country, will improve, will be feasible, will be more acceptable, and so all the ways and means that we can create to improve these communications, this flow of information, will help mutually both communities to create value. So the coming months, we can try to maybe improve these lines of communication between maybe new startups in the valley with potential customers in Turkey, just as we were talking before we started this conversation. And we are open to all ideas in TUSIAD that can increase the awareness within our community of potential that creates that are created by these new technologies, artificial intelligence, and so we are all very excited. We always come back from these trips to the valley extremely motivated, and with lots of new ideas, and so we see great value in this venture, in this in the Silicon Valley network in general. Aysegul.
Excellent. Yeah, Aysegul, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I totally second the president. I think, first of all, so far, what we focused on is the two audiences here, which is the professionals in the Valley. How do we help with their professional careers, but also help with network, and the startups, and the networking events, as well as the mentorship events that we held last year, were primarily focused on fundraising, mentorship from a starting and forming advisory board perspective, and then establishing partnerships and reaching out big corporations. It's the type of the stuff that we try to support the startups. I think what the president is mentioning, it's the next step level that we need to attack and embrace, which is how can we link the companies over here directly to the folks in Istanbul and Turkey, and have them build those business links and networks. We have some ideas. We started, discussing them. We're talking about them. So hopefully you will see some action in the near future. But what I'd like to do is use this opportunity for a call to action to all of you who are interested in becoming either directly getting in touch with TUSIAD through our network, or being a volunteer and support us with your ideas. We're very open and we will welcome you. So do get in touch with me, with İpek and Barış Bey and Eldon. Write to us and let's start talking. Thank you.
All right, excellent. So I will start sharing some of the questions that are coming from the audience. We already have 5 of them listed, and just again as a reminder, you can just type in your questions in the Q&A section and we'll go through as many of them as we possibly can in the remaining time. So the very first one, I believe this is for Simone Bey. What is your assessment of the Turkish policy response, both monetary and fiscal, in relation to the global policy response?
Mm-hmm. Well, Turkey is an emerging market, and so, like, you need to compare emerging markets with the emerging markets, so compared to the European response or the American response, where you're able to have a monetary quantitative easing with a currency that is basically used as a reserve currency worldwide, is a completely different situation than an emerging market that has limited reserves and relatively limited needs, because quantitative easing in the case of Turkey can cause inflation and can cause devaluation and so disrupt basically the level of indebtedness, etc. So it's more difficult to manage in countries like Turkey. As I said before, the health part was managed quite effectively and efficiently. And on the fiscal and monetary part, there has been some policies that make you think of capital controls that were imposed a little bit because of the necessity to bring to a certain balance the trade deficit that we have in Turkey. And so these are policies that are somehow affecting the, let's say, the free market, and so these are policies that, as we get closer to normal operations, should be taken back. There are some other policies that we may like to take as a let's say lesson for the future, like all the policies that are necessary to for work from home type of practices, etc. But some others which are, let's say, more of a protective nature needs to be eventually taken back, because in the end we are all countries that are very much interdependent, and we need eventually to create value by being competitive in certain areas more than others. And it's not by protecting, having protectionary measures that you can really in the long term create sustainable value.
Great, thank you. Aysegul, I'll forward the next one to you. In crises, what were or are your expectations from people who reported to you? What did you find that they did best? It would be great to hear your perspectives as we support senior managers in our daily work.
In crisis, what did they do best? Is that the question?
Yeah, and what were your expectations from them? How did you motivate them? And
gotcha.
You know,
as I said, I think clarity and simplicity is the number one. So do not ask people 15 things, right? When there's crisis, give them only one goal, as simple as, you know, doable as, so that they can concentrate, they focus, and then forget the how. Just say the what do you want them to do? Say, okay, I want you to, you know, save the day, which is, you know, keep the revenue number as whatever it is, or go, you know, don't worry about these, you know, 5 things because we can't do them, it won't work. So just go win in this area, and that's all you can do. Great, that's my expectation. So simplicity of goal, and then once you set that goal, enabling them with support that they decide what the how is. So let them, you know, empower them and give them the support that they can go deliver that, but leave it up to them to decide how they're going to do it, I think is the most important thing. Of course, in crisis times, it always helps to have HQ teams, wherever they sit, it doesn't matter, but who can keep up the infrastructure going. So the field teams can tap into and say, hey, I need this, I don't have this, I need technical support, what have you. Beef that up. I would strongly suggest that you beef up your infrastructure teams to keep the folks afloat. Is what I probably would do. But keep the morale high, as I said, is the most important thing. They need a purpose to go to work. You know, daily remind everybody, hey, we're here because we're trying to better, you know, children's lives, or we're trying to give, you know, technology to the women and the elderly who sit at home. That's, always remember that. Then they run faster, is what I would say.
All right, excellent. I will throw this next one out there, and whoever wants to take it first, go for it. Making a reference to the crisis is a terrible thing to waste. What would be considered as the opportunity during this time for Turkish American entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, what is, Aysegul, if you let me go first, I mean,
please.
What is being discussed everywhere is the decoupling of the value chains. During this, and I think there is a big awareness everywhere in the world that you need the security of your supply chains. Some countries, Italy, for example, is one of those that had like more than 1,000 doctors that died because they didn't have enough protective equipment, like simple masks or protective equipment that they had to use in hospitals, etc. So, as countries try to create some autonomy in some critical and strategic products or services, there will be some new investments, both in terms of manufacturing products, but also investments in services. that will create employment opportunities in certain regions. Europe, for example, is somehow understanding its weaknesses, the weaknesses of the Union, in the sense that there were certain items that they had not been able to integrate effectively, like monetary union, fiscal union, and now they are working on this, and doing this, they try to put at the disposal of the economy huge amounts of money that they will borrow on a long-term basis to try to improve the strength of Europe in certain areas where they had actually failed, such as the digital economy.